Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for coming this afternoon. This is the inaugural Spark Speaker Series, and this is sponsored by the Nation Builder Program. And Spark, in case you're wondering, it's one of those long acronyms. It stands for Stimulate Possibilities, Awareness, Resilience, and Knowledge. And the idea behind the Spark Speaker Series, and we're going to have several of these in the course of the year, is to bring together highly successful, recognizable Canadians and speakers to campus who will spark curiosity across our student community and beyond with their perspectives on relevant subjects. Before I introduce today's guests and speakers, I want to acknowledge the generosity of the founding sponsor of the Spark Series, which is the Schulich Foundation. They allowed us, through their generosity, to offer this program, this event, but also the Schulich Nation Builder Program. And now this is one of our inaugural events, and you'll see the sign over there, Schulich Hall. And I was going to leave this story for my memoirs, but I guess I'll tell it now, of the complex negotiations that led to the naming of this particular hall. And so the day that we had Judy Schulich Stein and her husband David Stein here on campus to announce the Nation Builder project, we did a tour of campus afterwards. And we came into this beautiful theater, and Judy said, "Wow, this is really nice. Has anybody named it?" And of course, as a university president, your eyes immediately light up with enthusiasm. And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, how much would it take to name that?" And I just blurted out $1 million. And she said, "Okay, we can do that." And when I told my board chair, who is a banker, Brian Porter, he said, "Why didn't you say 5? Come on." But as a result, this beautiful facility now does have a name through the generosity of the Schulich family and foundation, and this event now exists. I want to thank them, and David Stein is here with us today. David, thank you. And so today is our inaugural Spark speaker. We have a friend of mine and a tremendous friend of Huron in Michael Medline. And I'll just say a word about Michael, and then I'll tell you about the guy that's sitting beside him as well. Michael has been the CEO of 2 of Canada's most iconic companies. Canadian Tire, which he led to great success, and then Empire Corp, which is the holding company of Sobeys, another iconic Canadian company. And at Sobeys, he offered this total turnaround of their business success, of their stock valuation, and every metric you could possibly imagine. And he's now coming to the end of a 10-year run as CEO of that. And so you thought, if you want to have somebody talking about business and entrepreneurship in Canada, somebody who's led 2 of the brands that are household and led them so successfully. So he's a true Canadian business all-star. He was recognized by the Globe and Mail as Canada's CEO of the Year, and then that recognition was in turn followed by being named Canada's most admired CEO by Waterstone Capital, and then just last year the Trailblazer Award by the Retail Council of Canada. In addition to his role as CEO at Empire Corp, Michael sits on the board of directors of Scotiabank, and I know today we have some Scotiabank leaders here today and some Sobeys leaders, and welcome all you friends to be with us as well. And while all those business accomplishments are well known, it's because Michael's a true leader with heart that we asked him to be our inaugural Spark speaker. He demonstrates, to me at least, what corporate social responsibility should be about, because he lives it in his personal actions. It's not performative. He believes in giving back and building a stronger society. He doesn't just write checks, but he does that too. He actually commits to causes. So he serves as on the board of trustees for Sick Kids Hospital and on the board of directors of the Sobeys Charitable Foundation. He's given his time and his talents by serving on the board of Sick Kids Foundation, the Canada Sports Hall of Fame, and the Black North Initiative. And finally, he's been a pillar of Huron's own board since its establishment 6 years ago, and now sits as vice chair of that board. Michael holds an MBA from Richard A. Mason School of Business at William & Mary, a law degree from the University of Toronto, and most importantly, a BA in history from Huron University, from which he also received an honorary doctorate. So I couldn't think of a better individual to have as our first Spark speaker, Michael Medline. And joining Michael and me on stage today and serving as moderator is Steve Paikin. And in an age of sound bites and clickbait and out-of-context memes, Steve has been the voice of rational, fact-based journalism for 4 decades in Canada. His specialty is really in-depth, what we now sometimes call as long-form journalism, that goes beyond headlines to actually inform citizens about the crucial issues facing our democracy. For 19 years, of course, he hosted The Agenda with Steve Paikin on TVO. He continues to co-host podcasts focusing on provincial affairs and writes for the Toronto Star. Steve's written 10 books, count them. That's almost, well, maybe more than I've read, but that's wonderful. Including biographies of former Ontario premiers, Bill Davis and John Robarts, and former Prime Minister John Turner. Steve's strictly nonpartisan approach to covering politics has resulted in him being asked to moderate 4 federal election leaders' debates and 5 Ontario provincial election leader debates. Steve was born in Hamilton, Ontario, earned his BA at Victoria College, University of Toronto, his master's in broadcast journalism at Boston University, and at last count, he's been awarded 5 honorary doctorates on top of the earned degrees he has. Steve was invested as an officer of the Order of Canada, a member of the Order of Ontario. He's been awarded the King Charles III Coronation Medal.
Okay, Barry, enough. People, I mean,
No.
My parents wouldn't sit through this. Come on.
I haven't even got along to your convictions yet. Wait till. Now, the last and most important thing is that Steve tends to fall in love with hard luck sports teams. He loves the Toronto Maple Leafs, despite no Stanley Cup since 1967. He adores his hometown Hamilton Ticats, despite no Grey Cups since 1999. And his patience with the Red Sox finally paid off when we won the World Series and 3 more. Now, the fact that he tends to love losers causes me to wonder why he's friends with me, but we'll take that up on another time. And so what's going to happen today is that we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat here, and Steve and Michael and I are going to engage in a bit of conversation. And Steve, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Barry, I think. Okay. Jamie Stewart, are you here? There you are. Okay, you know your dad and I are pals, so we got to chat after. Good, okay, very good. And Kate Graham's here too. Hi, Kate. You know the Liberal leadership is vacant again. You got any ideas? No? Once was enough? You're cured. For now. You're young, you never know. Okay. Michael, let's start with this. The first kind of big decision that most young people have to make in their lives is where they want to go to university. And you decided to come here, but you're not from London.
No.
So why'd you come here?
Well, it wasn't. I have 4 kids, and it's a little different today where people travel around and they check out where they should go to school, and they, you know, I think some of it's just wanting to travel around and go to places. But I'll tell you what, in those days, and maybe it was me, but I think more people were like that, you just wrote down 3 universities and you decided to go there. And whoever would take you. And but my dad went to Western, and so I figured, okay, he's not a bad guy. So I wanted to go to Western, and then I heard that from some schoolmates that Huron was good because it was a small college in a big university setting, and so I decided I wanted to go to Huron. I never saw Huron till the day I pulled up to go to school here, and but I fell in love with it right away.
That was your first day on campus?
First day ever seeing the campus was the day I came, and actually it was, my mother kept, you guys had this where your mother comes to your room, or father perhaps in some cases, and starts to put things away and clean your drawers and things like that, and I was just mortified. But that's my biggest memory, was trying to get them to leave Huron at that point. And then I felt bad, so that's why the Student Commons is named after my parents, actually, because I don't think I appreciated them enough. That, you know, I was just a bit embarrassed, actually, at that point.
Did your mom go to Western as well?
No, my mother didn't. She went to your school, Vic.
She went to Vic.
Yeah.
All the best people do. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that was the wrong place to say that, wasn't it? Yeah, it sure is. I'm assuming you had a good experience during your time here, otherwise you wouldn't be here today?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. I mean, it really was to be part of a big campus, but then have this this community that you could be part of, and you could play ball hockey, or you could get into student politics, and you had friends. And I was on Second North, and I was there 2 years. I liked residence, so I should never have moved out of residence. I should still be there probably, but I really loved the whole experience, and I loved the education. The history department was full of great teachers, great Canadian teachers, and then some Americans who did not want to participate in the Vietnam War. So it was a really strong faculty, and I got a great education, which serves me to this day, and it's why I'm so connected to Huron. I'd be nothing without Huron.
Well, let me follow up on that with Barry, because it's not abundantly clear to many people that if you decide you want to have a career in business and run a big company, that your educational experience should start at a small liberal arts educational establishment. Why does that make sense?
Yeah, and kind of that's one of the ways that Michael and I bonded. We're just reflecting on that day. It was in the cafeteria, Sobeys headquarters in Mississauga, and we each thought this was just going to be a polite 10 minutes, whatever meeting, and it turned into an hour and a half, where we were talking about various authors and ideas and everything else. And I went away, and I remember going home and telling Sarah, this cat is different from the usual Bay Street guys. Like, he reads books, he has ideas, and takes this stuff seriously. So there was a column today in the National Post, I just saw this, lamenting the loss of the study of history and the effect it's having on us societally. And so I talked to Michael, and he had this shared understanding of what a democratic society was, and that the depth and the vitality of a society depended on more than a balance sheet. It was understanding where we came from, what the contours of the country were all about, what the cost of building a country was all about. And then the last part was the humane aspect of what we owed to society. And so we had just begun talking about this Leaders with Heart idea, and he resonated with that. He was trying to be that kind of a leader within Empire Corp, and the same legacy at Canadian Tire, in the sense of trying to be a decent human being, even while you're running one of these giant capitalist organizations. And I thought, that is what I'd like to see our students who get into business exemplify. And so, one thing led to another. And now, as I go around the world when I talk to schools, I'll use him as an example, and several other graduates who came, did a liberal arts degree, studied humanities, which are derided by so many as being useless. And I said, well, okay, this guy is running the second biggest employer in Canada with 140,000 employees, and he came from a history degree.
Well, okay, let me, just for the purposes of being provocative and a bit of a pain in the neck, push back on that. What could you possibly have learned in how many years here at Huron?
3.
3 years. What could you possibly have learned in 3 years at Huron that would be useful to what you do now?
Well, I think it's the ability to think, and to think critically, and to challenge. I really have a belief that you have to, a lot of great people read. They read, and they think about things, and they communicate, and they have conversations. And although, I could wax poetically about the Blue Jays for about an hour, I think it's also useful to understand the world and understand different points of view. And not only your own point of view. I understand a lot of people don't agree with me on a lot of issues, and I want to understand that. But there was that challenge here to think critically that made all the difference in everything I did. And the professors here were, it was different. It wasn't classes of 500, 600 people like probably you had, Steve, at your school.
In fairness, both, as your mother would tell you, in fairness, both. Okay. Some big classes, some nice small ones.
Yeah, and so it was a really personal experience where you would, you'd get to know the professors, you get to know your fellow students. And I grew here. I had gone to an all-boys school for a long time, and the first class in English class, I got schooled by a young woman, and I went, oh, this is going to be interesting. And it was just a broadening of my perspectives, and I got really involved in student government at Huron and at Western while I was here. So there were so many opportunities that I took advantage of at the time, but it was just that ability to think. And I think that we get too narrow too quickly sometimes these days. And it really does help you. The best leaders, and it can be business, it can be in other professions, the best leaders are able to talk about a broad swath of issues. And that's what I like.
Steve, I want to
Please.
push this point a bit more too. Recent discouraging conversation with somebody within the provincial government, and they were asking the same thing you were asking, but not in a kindly provocative way, but in a hostile way. Like, why should we have even this point kind of education?
Was it the Minister of Colleges and Universities?
I can't disclose. And my colleague, Alan Shepard, was with me in this meeting, and their version of education they described was what I describe as training, where you're presented with a bunch of rote facts and skills, and your job is to memorize those and reproduce those skills. And the kind of education I have liberal arts, we don't give you the answers up front and get you to memorize them. You have to spend time swimming through to find those answers. And sometimes you don't find those answers, and you just spend a lot of time swimming and thinking and being challenged, knowing that it's going to be years before you get clarification on that. And so writing an essay on a topic that's very challenging and very difficult, what an amazing exercise now. And so I think we do have to try and demonstrate that this creates a kind of habit of mind, and that there's a value, particularly in a society where we want citizens to be able to question government, we want citizens to be able to question one another, and not just recite stuff given to them. And that's what, when I encountered this kind of education at 18, that's what it did for me. It shook me up and unmoored me.
I think that's brilliant, Barry, because, a few years ago I was at this dinner with a bunch of CEOs, and they want you all to be trained in whatever the skill of the day is, okay? Whatever that skill of the day is, and only train for that. And a lot of government leaders think that's great too. We're just, just whatever is needed in the business community at that moment is what everyone should learn. The problem is, 5 years later, you're at the side of the road, and the next cadre of students comes through. And to be trained as I think most people here are being trained, and I was, and to learn in that way makes you more adaptable. I've done all sorts of different things. I was a lawyer for a while. I've run different businesses. I tried different things because I could adapt to it.
Securities regulator.
Well, that was like a summer job, but yes. But yeah, I didn't know what to do for a while, and it was a great job actually learning that. So I worked for the Ontario Securities Commission, and that was one of my first real jobs. But it just allows you to move around, and I think too, honestly, and it depends what you aspire to do. I always aspired to run a big public company, so not everyone wants to do that.
What was the eureka moment when you said, now I know what I want to do?
I was a lawyer, and I was on the wrong side of the desk, and I was so bored doing. Anyone here studying law? Because I always insult someone. Yeah.
Richard's a law professor, Rich McLaren in the front row.
Well, he knows what I'm talking about. So I think some people are born for the law, like Richard here, and then some people are not. But I kept sitting on the wrong side of the desk as a young person going, I wish I was on the business side of the desk, and that's when I became serious about business. But there's that ability to adapt, and if you want to, if you're trained for one thing, you're probably not going to run many things. Okay, maybe that's okay. That's all you want to do, bully for you. And some of my kids might even want to do that. But if you want to lead a group or lead an organization or run a university or have a career like yours, you better be a bit more broad-based than what people want you to be.
Well, we have a few things in common. My dad went to Western. I got 4 kids. Mm-hmm. And I know at certain stages of all of their lives, they had these big existential questions, and Barry, maybe I'll get you to follow up on this. What am I put here to do? What am I supposed to do? What's my mission in life? And you figured it out. You figured out you wanted to run a big company, and you got to fulfill that mission and experience a lot of wonderful things in that dream. For the people in this room who aren't yet sure what that mission is, how do you find it?
Yeah, I had that exact conversation with a young student this morning, and almost every week I'll talk to a first or second year student or a high school student. And Sarah, my wife, and I've team taught for many years in university. And one of the things we would do in the first week of class is go around the room and say, what's your name, where are you from, what do you want to do? And we would find two kinds of students, ones who would have their entire life charted out to retirement. I'm going to make a partner at 35, and then I'm going to do this, that. And then at least 50% of the class say, I don't know. And we're also cheered by the I don't know, because they were open to listening to anything, as opposed to somebody whose radio was only turned to one channel, and they only wanted to hear the thing to prep them. And so what I tell first year and second year students, high school students, take your time on this. I mean, I zigged and zagged, Steve. I went to university at 18, wanted to be a journalist, and I realized what an immoral occupation. Oh, sorry. and then I decided I want to be a lawyer, and then I ended up a career in the church, and then the army, and then eventually as an academic. And zigged and zagged a lot, and at each point thought I was doing the right thing at the time until I ended up where I am now, where I think I've got the greatest job in the world. And I think there's a lot of pressure now that I didn't have on 18-year-olds to have it all figured out
That's
right now.
right. They all think they need to know at 18
Yeah.
what I'm going to do for the next 78 years of my life.
Yeah.
They don't have to, do they?
No, and particularly in such a dynamic world now where entire industries are arising that didn't exist 10 years ago. Ones that were big are gone now. And so to have that confidence that 40 years is all fixed, I think we do them a disservice. So it goes back to the adaptable thing. Don't just learn how to use a screwdriver. Figure out how to use a wrench, the hammer, the screwdriver, the pliers, every tool in the toolbox that you can, because somewhere down the road, that might be the one you need. And so that's, what I try to say is don't stress yourself out. Here, I want to give you a piece of heresy, too. If I'll speak to students, this is my, don't spend all your time in the library, okay? Make some friends, have some fun, join some clubs, and have a balanced life. At this stage, this is going to be the freest opportunity you have to do all of those things, and it will pay off in spades later on that you made those relationships. So,
Barry, that's so funny. The last thing my father said to me before I went off to U of T was, don't let the classroom get in the way of your getting a good education. And by that he meant the whole thing, right? The whole gamut of experiences that you get on a university campus. It's amazing. Okay, we've taken a sort of a good look at the more narrowly focused aspects of why we're here today, and now I want to broaden our discussion because we are living in, well, we're all old enough to know that we are living in some of the most shocking times ever in the history of Canada. In some respects, in existential times. In some respects, we went to bed in November and we thought the United States was our best friend, and we woke up in January and there's a guy down there who doesn't like us very much and wishes us ill. And I think we need to have a better understanding in this room of how we're supposed to deal with that. So, Michael, in an era of Trump, tariffs, trade, how does this country get its act together so that we can withstand all of those threats?
Yeah, when I grew up, it was like the golden age, right? And we never thought any of this. And so it's shocking. And the people who are coming up now are going to be, I think, probably tougher than I was, or more resilient, because it's just they've gone through more things. They've gone through a pandemic. They've gone through this Trump tariff thing. I think there's probably not a person in this room that, that thinks this is great for Canada in terms of our neighbor to the south. But I'm an optimistic person. We will survive this. We'll get along. We'll do well. But, I think we can I don't want to blame Trump and tariffs for all of our ills as a country. Before Trump came along, we ranked 33rd out of 38th in productivity in OECD countries. OECD today, I'm not going to do a lot of stats, don't worry. OECD now projects that over the next 40 years, we will destroy more wealth than any other country out of the 38. And so, we can look at, we got to deal with Trump, we got to deal with the tariffs, and I think we will. I'm optimistic. But we were not heading for a good place anyway. And why does that matter to you? Especially, we're older. Why does it matter to the students in this room? Because your standard of living won't be good. Because your universities won't be as strong. Your health care won't be as good.
You can't afford a home.
You can't afford a home. You can't, and it's like erosion of a beach because of storms. we will not have the standard of living that someone growing up somewhere else will have, and that you deserve, and that your families deserve. And so this isn't a joke. But we weren't heading in a really productive way, but we can turn it around. We can turn around.
Well, we'll get the prescription for that in a
Yeah.
second. But follow up on that if you would, Barry. I mean, it's very convenient right now to blame everything that's going wrong in Canada on Donald Trump, and to be sure, he's entitled to his share of that. But what boat are we missing, absent of Trump, that we need to become masters in our own house about?
It sounds self-serving, of course, but education is so crucial. We've seen an erosion of public support for education from the 1970s, where over 80% of the budget of a university was supported by public funds, to now here at Huron, where about 9% of our budget is supported by public funds.
As in from the government of Ontario?
Yep.
9%.
And so what that means is 90% of our budget every year is hustle money. It's money we raise through philanthropy or recruiting students or whatever else we can find around the fringes, parking charges, res costs, ancillary, and all of those things. And I remember a finance minister in the province of New Brunswick, probably 15 years ago, telling the truth to the province, and it was quite astounding. And he was saying that education was the single greatest investment a province could make in terms of long-term cost recovery. Alcoholism, obesity, domestic violence, incarceration rates, all tied to education levels. And if you could increase the education level of the province, you could reduce costs in all kinds of other areas in the long term. And it's sort of as if we've lost sight of that long-term benefit of education. And it's the single greatest thing in changing social mobility outcomes for people in marginalized communities.
Has the academic world failed to make that case adequately to
Yes.
decision makers?
Yeah, I think we have to own part of that. And it's easy to say it's the fault of the government, and it is. But government responds to public pressure. It responds to the perception of what polls tell them. And the finance minister, a former finance minister in the province, told me that there aren't mobs of people marching up University Avenue demanding more money for universities. And so we haven't successfully made the case. But the long-term cost, as we slip backwards and we see some of our finest institutions losing talent and losing quality, will be real difficult long-term payoff.
Okay, so Michael, tell us, what 3 things could we do in this country to improve?
Yeah, and I don't think, I'm not going to try to equate what I did at a company to the country, but when I came into Empire to Sobeys, it wasn't that the 140,000 people weren't good. They were good. It was that they were being led poorly, and they had bad policies and strategy. It wasn't the people. I have a huge confidence that Canadians, the people in this room, are as good as anyone in the world. They're educated. They've had the opportunities. They can do really well, and that we're holding back these people. And it's got to be, and it's not just government, it's the business world as well. But when I look at, and the education, all the other sectors, but when I look at it, we've made it this an incredibly difficult country to do business in. And I've switched my politics. I'm not, as my friend Andrew over there will tell you, I'm not just one way. I think through issues, and I don't fall in any kind of spectrum. But I don't think when you have, the highest taxes outside of France, and they're probably not an exemplar of, tax strategy, when you have trade barriers between provinces, when you have regulations, and by the way, companies need regulations, but not stupid, silly regulations. When you have, a competition bureau that won't allow strong Canadian companies, when you have policies that stop us from being successful, we can have the greatest people in the world out here. It's going to be hard to do business. And we've seen a hollowing out of this country. I was looking the other day, there's all these great mining companies and natural resource companies. We own like a couple of them, okay? They're owned by other countries now. When you drive around the outskirts of London, you see these great factories which employ people who need jobs, their family need jobs. There's a hollowing out. They're leaving for the United States. And this happened before Trump and tariffs, because it is awfully hard to do business here. So when I came into Empire, I was told by all, like, I saw the Dr. Oetker plant, so I'll use Dr. Oetker on my way in here. I was told by all the suppliers to us, which is thousands of large and small suppliers to a grocery store, that this is the hardest country in the world to do business in. And so they want to leave, and they want to have their head offices, and they want to have their production across the border. Before Trump. And so I was new to grocery. I'd done Canadian Tire, I'd done Sport Check. So I asked BCG to do a study. What's the hardest, because I thought it was I thought they were exaggerating. The hardest country to do business for a CPG company is Canada. And then you look and you, I'm pretty passionate about this stuff. And you look and you go, wow, like if we could have just captured in a bottle how we felt in January and February when we were pissed off and we were going to do things, and I always talk about velocity, we haven't done any of them yet. And I'm not blaming the politicians. It's across the board. It's across. This country has to move fast, and we have to be bold. And if I can say, those are my two things. Be bold, move fast. We were going to have all the interprovincial trade barriers
By
down.
July 1st.
By July 1st. If any come down, if any, maybe there was a liquor in BC or something I read about, like, come on. And so, and I'll, if I may, my hobby horse, which is the demonization of business, of capitalism, which goes on. And by the way, that's where many people in this room will end up working, which employs us, which has employed me and given me a nice life. Not all business is great. Unregulated, they would be mostly horrible. But they're not villains as portrayed by many politicians and many, and not you, Steve, but many in the media. And until we have this where we're not attacking each other and we're trying to beat everyone else, we should be the greatest country on earth. And we can do it. We were doing it, and we just stopped doing it. And so I'm really optimistic when I look around that if we can be bold, if we can seize this moment, and maybe we'll look back, and we won't be fond of Trump, but maybe we'll look back and we said, he made us do some things that we had to do, but we got to do them, and we got to move fast.
Well, Jean Chrétien says we should give him the Order of Canada for how much he's united us. That's Chrétien's line.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good line.
Do you? Again, I don't want to pick on academia here, but it has been suggested that the lack of love of capitalism in this country is because of a professoriate that is overwhelmingly left-wing and doesn't really understand the connection between a thriving economy and a buoyant country. You want to go there?
I think you said you weren't going to ask me any hard questions. We'd say if that
I
was
don't
for
remember
Medline.
saying that.
No,
I don't
you didn't
remember
say
saying that.
No, I think that's too easy an answer. I think the complexities of why we have the attitudes that have made productivity low in the country, why we've had the doubts, why a lot of young people I've talked about and talked to think, okay, they're going to leave to start up a company in another jurisdiction. Those aren't because of the professoriate. Those aren't because of one particular attitude, I think, and it's going to take a long time to turn a lot of that around. And I want to get away from kind of the either-orism. There's one of the professors in the room I've talked to about this is achieving both things, that you can have a robust economy, which I believe is necessary, and having a fair and equitable society. But to support the programs that we associate with fair and equitable society, access to education and healthcare, you can't have those without a robust economy. And we're coming to the end of the road in Canada now in terms of government debt. So we've been able to pay for those programs not because they were sustainable themselves, but we could just borrow money. And we're soon to the end of the amount we can borrow because the cost is unsustainable for the government. And so it can't be either or, and that's part of the tearing apart of society and the polarization we're seeing. Those who want social programs, those who want to support business. I think we have to have both. And we have to have, so that's what I want to try and avoid, that kind of polarization. But I want to offer an optimistic word if I can.
Sure.
Some of you may have heard this morning, there are two kids, 13 and 15 years old this morning on the CBC, who have developed a Trump board game. And they and 7 or 8 other kids from their middle school were at a cottage. They were bored out of their mind. The Wi-Fi was down, so they were forced to amuse themselves. And so they developed a Trump board game. And part of it is, you have to guess where this quotation was actually said by Trump or was made up. And of course, the most outlandish ones were actually said by him. And anyway, as I listened to these two, it was only after I heard at the end they're 13, 15, I thought they were university students, because they had so much thought about politics and so much insight. And so we just came from the Nation Builder classroom where we had 25 students asking tough questions and debating things. The students I encountered here at Huron, like the nearly 800 that signed up this year to come to a liberal arts school, they're far more engaged, passionate, and sophisticated about world affairs and events than I was 40 years ago. And so I hear people sort of crapping on this particular generation as being entitled and so on. What I actually see is a significantly greater degree of passion than I saw 20 years ago teaching. And that's where my optimism, and so I won't go as far as Chrétien to give the guy the Order of Canada, but I think there is an awakening of political consciousness and interest, but we can't waste it. Because if these young people see that their passions and interests are stymied and they can't grow here, then we'll have wasted that talent. Yeah.
Michael, I want to ask you about ethics. There are a lot of young people in this room, and I'm going to bring this back to the President of the United States, who watch him operate. And we don't have to be flowery in our language, let's just call him ethically challenged from time to time, okay? And they see no consequences to the most unethical, egregious behavior. And they probably at some point naturally ask themselves, there's no marks in being ethical anymore, why should I bother? What's the answer to that?
Yeah, I completely disagree with that statement. And then operating with heart, like Barry always talks about, really resonates with me, as he said. You can do your job, you can be competitive, and you can do it the right way, and you can play within the rules, and you can be kind. And I talk a bit about, and it sounds a bit silly, but I talk about a kinder capitalism, which it's not cutthroat. It's to try to do the right thing to make life better for the people who work with us, for our customers, and doing it that way. It would not be very fun cheating and winning. It would not be very fun taking advantage of others. And I don't think in the long term, it's not a long-term winning strategy. And you got it, and people find you out very, very quickly if you do things the wrong way. This is it's an important country, but it's a small country. And your reputation and how you handle yourself, even at school, that reputation stays with you. You can always make mistakes. I've made mistakes in my life. But how you carry yourself, that's all you've got at the end of the day. That's all you've got is your name and whether you act in an ethical manner. And by the way, you don't have to, I had some of my best professors, by the way, were, I don't like the term, but left wing, okay? And I learned a lot from them. And so I'm not saying everybody has to think the same way. But I think that there is a way of being. And I think that's what I loved about what Barry was espousing when he first came to Huron, and why I became involved. And why every time I come here, I'm impressed by the students, by the faculty, by the way this, plus we had none of these buildings you had. It was really not good. Every time I pull up, I go, I'm so jealous, but it's good for the students, and but I think that there's a way of doing it, and you can win and you can prosper doing it the right way, and most of the people I know in business do it that way, and we know perfectly well the people who do not carry themselves that way.
We do, and some of them get to be President of the United States, and this is why I'm raising this issue, because the more authoritarian the behavior, the more narcissistic the behavior, the more egregious the behavior, doesn't seem to have any consequences for him. And I don't know what lessons young people are supposed to draw from that example, but I'm betting they're not good.
Yeah, well, history is a great educator in that respect. I think you're hard-pressed to find many of those kinds of leaders who endure.
Long road.
Either their own reign is short, or the environment that they want to create and the regime they want to create does not persist either. I mean, that's, I think, a lesson that history teaches us. I talked one time to our chancellor many years ago, to Prem Watson. Prem's a very highly ethical person. And I'd asked him, you know, Prem, you're a billionaire. And is it possible to be a billionaire and keep your soul intact? And that's a conversation we had many times. And he says from his own standpoint, it's absolutely necessary. If he didn't try and maintain his soul, his character, his love for his family, his faith, all of those things, he would have turned into a very bad person. And the second thing he said is just on a business level, if you don't try and do it, after a while, nobody wants to do business with you. And Trump's been president for 5 years. It's not forever. And 3 more years, he'll be done.
You think?
We hope, yeah. But if you want to be 30, 40 years, like our young people here that are 18, 19, and they're going to have 40 years of working, and you want to have the people around the office respect you, good references for your next job, other people want to headhunt you because you're such a great employee, that doesn't happen if you're a dirty rat. And so, yeah, 7, 8 years of awfulness seems like a big thing, but in the long scope of time, that stuff doesn't persist.
Okay. I want to sneak a question in here that we got on the internet, and this is from someone, and it's a, this is a question you've probably heard before, but still I'm intrigued by what your answer would be. You're sitting down with your 20-year-old self. What are you telling that person?
Yeah, and I get this question a lot from people who work with me, the younger people. What advice would you give? And I usually start with saying that I don't like giving advice, and then I realize I give a lot of advice to people these days. So, but what I have learned is you got to be asked for it, because my kids do not like unsolicited advice. My advice is, and I think it's my number one piece of advice, is enjoy what you're doing at the time. And I was terrible at that until I was 40 years old. So I'd have a job, and I was doing the job, and it was a good job, but I was always looking for what was the next job, because I was overly ambitious. And so I'd get a new job, or I'd get something new, and I'd go, wow, that's amazing. And then 2 weeks later, I'd be like, oh, it's not so fulfilling. What am I going to get next? And it was a terrible way to live, and I was missing out on great things. I had good jobs mostly. And it wasn't until I finally, when I was 40, I said, it took me that long to learn this, is when I was 40, I said, wow, if this is a great job, why don't I just enjoy this job and do this job and stop complaining that I don't have another job or a higher job? And from that day on, and I got everything I ever wanted, but at the same time, I was having fun. And I think there's a pressure in this world on students, on young people in the workforce. And I think you should be at a place that rewards you, then that recognizes you. So one of my kids, a couple of years ago, went to work at a company, and a big company, you'd recognize the name, and they told them that you're in charge of your own career, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. How can you, at 20 years old, and in this case, he was 23, be in charge of your own career? You should do your job, and the company or whatever organization you work for should recognize you if you're good, and you should do well. You shouldn't have to go around looking after your own career. And if you're at someone, this all goes together, which is enjoy the job. And if you don't enjoy the job, or you don't enjoy what you're doing, get the hell out. Go do something else, because there's somewhere that you're going to love, and they're going to love you, and you're going to be rewarded.
But the notion is the future will take care of itself if you really love what you're doing. If you're good. That doesn't mean don't show ambition. That doesn't mean, but it does mean don't always be looking for the next rung, because there's always a next rung. So you'll never be happy. You'll always be comparing yourself to another person. Just, you do your best. You'll probably be rewarded if you're not put yourself in a position to be that person. Barry, what would you ask your 20-year-old self? Or tell your 20-year-old self, sorry.
Well, my 20-year-old self was a complete moron. So there's a very long list of mistakes that I would offer correction. But I've thought about putting this on the cover of our view book. So the view book, all students will know, that's a shiny book we took to your high school, and it looks like everybody else's shiny book. What I would have told myself then is what I'd like to put in the cover of the view book, it's not all about you. And I spent a large portion of my life thinking it was all about me, and that's a road to unhappiness is what I now know. And that's what I've told myself then. All the insecurities, all the doubts, all of the unhappiness I had then was because I was focused on myself all the time. And once you get over that a little bit, you have a much better life. And we've got a society right now that tells everybody that it's all about personal fulfillment at all costs. And I think actually the road to happiness is getting out of yourself and thinking about others. So that would be my...
I see you nodding here.
Yeah, totally. I mean, those two things go together,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Steve, I got to ask you a question, though, since we got you here.
Uh-oh.
Lifetime in journalism. It's a profession under fire and decline. We hear all the time and all that, but that's not important. It's not, loss of journalism as a profession in itself is not the point. The point, I think, is the cost to democratic society of the kind of inquiry that journalism does. Where are we in this cycle? Have we hit a low? Is it still falling apart? Have we found a solution or way back where, I mean, we've just seen an example right now in the United States where journalists are going to be shut out of attending Pentagon press conferences from all the leading agencies. But there's another version of it here, just because people don't read newspapers, they don't read long things anymore. Too long didn't read is a meme. What's the answer?
I think about this all the time, and I don't come up with any good answers. And I think the saddest thing, you have to understand, for the younger people in this room, when we were your age, you know, there was a very different time. There tended to be 3 American channels from which we got all our news, or 3 Canadian channels from which we got all our news. The notion of 500 channel universes did not exist. There was the notion that when you picked up the newspaper, yeah, it was credible. What you read was credible, and you felt that it gave you a good basis of understanding of what was going on in the world today. There's too much of the world today that doesn't care about empirically provable facts. And if you don't care about facts, but you only care about what you believe, then it doesn't matter what you read in the New York Times, it doesn't matter what you read in the Globe and Mail, it doesn't matter what you watch on TVO, it just doesn't matter. You won't care. And this, to me, I remember the moment when I was hosting the agenda, and I remember 2 people having a debate about something, and one of them, it was a politician, I won't say who it was, said, well, you know, you may have the facts on your side, but here's what I believe. And I stopped the discussion. I just said, well, wait a second. If this person has the facts on their side, then they're right. Then they win the argument, right? I mean, your opinion's interesting, but if it's not based in fact, who gives a damn? And that's kind of the problem today. Less in Canada, thankfully, than in the US. But there's just, I mean, half the country in the United States doesn't seem to care about, well, there are too many people on the left side of the spectrum who, you know, are all in for some things that are problematic, and there are too many people on the Trump side of the spectrum who are all in for things that are somewhat problematic, and the difficulty is we're losing our love of empirically proven facts, which I think is the basis of everything. Democracy, media, education, call it what you will, speech endeth. There we go. All right. How did I lose control of this? When did you get to... Anyways, let's... how am I doing on time here?
We've got 6 minutes.
6 minutes, okay. So let's... here's a big one for 6 minutes. Everybody wants to know sort of... Well, let's do the Gretzky expression, right? We don't want to. We want to know where the puck is going. We don't want to know where the puck has been. So as you look out on the landscape of the country right now, the trends that we should be looking towards, the phenomena that we need to be pursuing, speak.
Yeah, you're going to let me go first. Okay, thank you. Look, I think, first of all, I'm going to preface it by saying if you follow what your passion is, if you follow what you love, you're gonna do pretty well. And the people who I went to school with and who felt they had to take a certain path because of their parents or something else, a lot of them didn't enjoy what they did. And so, you know, so people can say, well, Before I was a lawyer, they said, oh, there are no jobs in law. You don't go into law. But there are plenty of jobs by the time I got there. And so I'm really loath to say where the puck's going to be, because we don't really know. We can imagine a year ago even predicting where we'd be today. I will say this. As much as I love being adaptable and flexible, it also leads me to embrace new ideas and new technology. And it's inevitable that we have to embrace advanced analytics and advanced and artificial intelligence, AI. It's a breakthrough technology. I don't know where it will end up. Two of my kids are excited about it. Two think it's going to take all their jobs and it's going to be an awful world. As you can tell, although I do follow facts, that's the one thing I can say I do. I am an optimist. But if you aren't paying attention to what's going on in breakthroughs like AI, I think that it's going to be difficult. And I think that it just augments, you're getting a lot of information and facts, I hope, that are useful to me. And so I'm addicted to ChatGPT. I just cannot believe it. And I keep asking it harder and harder questions, and then it takes longer and longer, and then I'm told that's not good for the environment, so that I start feeling really conflicted. But it is incredible, and we're at an early stage, and where can this lead? And I hope it leads somewhere good. By the way, I hedge my bets because I always say please and thank you to ChatGPT in case it is my overlord one day. And does anyone else do that? Are you really, yeah, right? Like, we're going to be okay. And then I have a colleague who swears at it, tells it it's stupid. Doug is a dead man, in my opinion. So.
Barry, in your world, where's the puck going?
No clue. As somebody taught history of philosophy for a long time, here's a hard belief by me: human nature doesn't change. The things that make human beings sad and the things that make human beings happy are the same things that made them sad and happy 10,000 years ago in every culture around the world.
That's what gives me hope in journalism. People
Yeah.
are still going to be curious for accurate information, God willing.
Yeah, and every time a technology comes by, we say, well, that's going to change everything. Well, it changes the tools we use to manipulate nature and to encounter the world around us. What we actually are doesn't change. The same thing we aspire to. We want to be in love. We want to have friends. We want to do all those things. And I'll just finish it up by where we started this conversation about this kind of education. We're not offering a technical education here. Others do it better and are capable of it. We're still trying to speak about these humane aspects, which I think will continue to be relevant in every respect. The thing I'll say to parents, and I get that question, like they say this in my office, what should my kid be taking for a major? By which they mean is, what are they going to make money in 20 years or whatever? And I say, I have no clue. Do you want your daughter to be happy? Mm-hmm. And they all say, well, yeah, of course. I said, well, let's talk about that. What makes your daughter happy? Mm-hmm. What does she enjoy? And I think that's the conversation I want to stir up more amongst students, amongst guidance counselors at school, among parents. So that aspect of human nature is, I think, the persistent one and what we aspire to and desire as human beings. Maybe it's a Ferrari or something else, but that isn't the real thing. It's happiness, it's peace, it's family, it's love, it's those things. That's the stuff that I think we can easily lose sight of, but to our ruin.
Beautiful. I've, of course, saved the most important question for last. I became a Red Sox fan before the Blue Jays existed. Barry is wearing his Red Sox and is a Red Sox fan because he's from the Maritimes. I assume you're a Blue Jay fan?
Oh, you're darn right I am.
Okay, and we're all watching tonight, of course.
Yeah.
Can we three all agree on a shared
Yes.
hatred of the New York Yankees?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Okay. All right. Good.
That's great, Steve. We've unified the country.
Okay, just a few housekeeping items before we finish here. We do want to thank the Schulich Foundation one more time for its support of all of what's going on here. Thank you so much, David Stein. Here's a #1 national bestseller, Seymour Schulich with Derek DeCloet, Life and Business Lessons Get Smarter. All of you, by coming today, these are on the table as you leave, free of charge. So grab a book on the way out and get smarter. And the last thing I think we have to do, we've got a Nation Builder student who's going to come up and offer some official thanks. Who's going to do that? How about giving her a hand, please? Come on up. Yeah.
Thank you so much. What an incredible conversation this has been today. And once again, I'd like to start off just by thanking the Schulich Foundation on behalf of the Nation Builder community for whose generous support has made this Spark series and other Nation Builder programming events a possibility. We would also like to sincerely thank our speakers today. Mr. Michael, thank you for sharing such incredible insights today. And Mr. Steve, thank you for leading this conversation with such thoughtfulness and depth. It was so lovely to sit in the audience. And just reflecting over the conversation that we've just been able to listen to, it's been so difficult to pick out one thing that stood out to me because it was enlightening. The whole conversation was enlightening. But I think I was very captivated by your optimism, Mr. Michael, and the 2 points you brought up, being bold and moving fast in terms of seeing Canada's prosperity. I thought that was so incredible, especially as young people. I thought it was very thought-provoking to be able to just sit back and see ways that we can start, walking towards those steps of boldness. So thank you for sharing that. And just as a small gesture of our gratitude, we would like to present you with a token of appreciation. And thank you so much to everyone for being here today. This event wouldn't have been possible without you being here today. And so even as we conclude this event, we would like to invite you all to continue your evening with a reception that is happening in the Medline Student Commons. Meanwhile, our Nation Builder students, could you kindly proceed to the upstairs to the Frank Holmes Executive Boardroom? Thank you so much, everyone.